Thanks, everybody. As I think you know, one of the things that the union needs to be doing is holding meetings with players wherever they happen to be to update them on the status of the negotiations, have discussion, answer questions, make sure that we understand what's important to the players, what their views are, how they react to the process of the negotiations, and all the rest of that. So we scheduled 4 of them for this period of time, several weeks before the expiration of the contract, but fairly close in the sense that we know a fair amount about what the positions of the parties are. We had one in Barcelona for the European players a week or so ago, and we have 2 more next week, one in Kelowna, British Columbia, and then one in Toronto. The discussions are ongoing, have been since I left in Toronto, and will continue next week. And, the hope is we'll be able to find a way through the disparate positions which now exist. I'll just put it that way. Had a good representation here. Ryan can give you the list of the players who were in attendance if that's something that you want to have. With that, if you got questions, I'll answer whatever you got to the extent I can.
What was the tone in there over the last couple of days?
I think it's fair to say that it was interested, it was focused, and it was sober. The players understand what's going on. They understand what the issues are. They understand how the owners' proposals would affect them. They understand how this compares to what happened 7 years ago and what the players gave up then, and they understand that this can affect their lives if we can't find a way through this in the immediate future. And so I'm very grateful for their help and support, obviously, but I'm very satisfied that they're knowledgeable and they're participating. As I think you know, we've had upwards of 50 players, including some of the most prominent in the game, that have attended negotiating meetings, and I expect that number to grow significantly over time.
How prepared are they for the possibility there could be a lockout?
How prepared are they? Well, look, hockey players either lived through or have teammates and friends that lived through the last lockout. They've heard about the owners' lockout in 1994. They watched on television what happened with the football and the basketball players. In these negotiations, we've had continued references to the football and basketball agreements by the owners' representatives. So the last thing that the threat or a suggestion of a lockout is a surprise to the players. And they've had it in the back of their minds, and in some cases more forward than that. And if it has to be, it'll be a real shame, and it'll be unfortunate. But they're prepared for it.
What's your feel after years of negotiations? What's your feel for whether you can do something before September 15th?
Well, look, if there's a mutual will to get this done, and we can find a common platform around which to construct an agreement, then obviously there's plenty of time in which to do that. But I've got to tell you, I am out of the prediction business. I have been out of the prediction business for some 2 decades about how things will go. All you can do is you work at it day by day, sometimes across the table, sometimes in informal conversations, sometimes internally, sometimes you're just thinking to yourself, and you hope that one of these days the right combination of factors will occur and you'll find a way to get there. It takes 2 to be able to do that. Hopefully there will be 2.
Do you get different opinions from players in terms of, Don, go with the hard line, let them, dictate to us, and do you also get, hey, we're going to have to give in a lot to play hockey, you know what I'm saying? Do you get guys that are more hardliners than others?
I think what you get is a fairly predictable range of questions. What happens about this? What do you think about that? Has this been considered? What have the owners said about this other thing? And so on. But the players are really pretty unified. And if there was any doubt about their understanding of this negotiation, that evaporated when we got the owner's proposal. It took anybody that plays hockey about as long as it took to read the proposal to understand what it would mean to them, both in terms of salaries and their own negotiating leverage and all the rest of it. And so whatever lingering doubts there might have been that the players weren't on the same page ceased to be there.
Well,
By the way, it's not surprising.
Bettman has said that, you've said that you can still go under the old agreement, but they don't seem to be willing to do that. So do you see any way that might occur, that you guys might say,
Look,
we can negotiate and then keep going?
Look, what I have said is this, and I want to repeat it, and I want to make it clear, all right? The law is this, that when a contract expires, if nobody does anything, if the owners don't say we're shutting the business down, and the employees don't say we're going on strike, you continue to negotiate and you continue to work under the terms of the prior agreement while you negotiate. And at a subsequent point in time, somebody can do something if they want to. My point has been that my experience suggests that creating artificial deadlines around negotiations, meaning you don't have to do something, but you choose to, and if there's a lockout, it will be a lockout of choice, not of necessity, is something which tends to make things more difficult rather than easier. It is taken by many people as a threat, certainly as an immediate consequence. And therefore, if you don't have to do it, you don't do it. From the player's standpoint, they have not talked about, much less discussed or voted on, initiating a stoppage on our side. We view a strike or a lockout, and that's what we're talking about now, a lockout, as a last resort. You negotiate, you continue to negotiate, you do everything you can, and only when you get to a point where you conclude there is nothing else to do and not another day that can be that you can wait, do you say, okay, we'll consider doing this. And what you have to hope is that that's the view that's on the other side. Unfortunately, what you saw in the last two negotiations in football and basketball, and what can be argued happened in hockey in 2004, is that the lockout was the strategy of first choice, not the strategy of last resort. And if, I hope that's not true this time, but, time will tell. Having said that, when Gary says it's much more preferable to get a deal done before September 15th, we agree with him.
The numbers that the league has come out with as far as their growth and revenues, does it jive with what you guys have come up with, the numbers, John?
In terms of revenue growth, yes. Oh, sure. There's not much doubt about that. Revenue was around $2.1 billion, give or take, depending on how you account for it, the last year before the lockout and the first year afterwards. And it's around 3.3 or a little more now. There's been enormous revenue growth at a period of time in which player salaries were significantly reduced by a very large percentage, and they were fixed at far below free market values. And so the owners had far more money left over after they had the players to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars per year than they did before. That was supposed to fix the problems.
You said a lockout can be a strategy of choice or necessity.
What I said was that it appeared in football and basketball this last time, and a lot of people think in hockey the last time that it was the strategy of choice, not of necessity.
When you consider their proposal, can you make that assessment now? Whether
I'm not going to make that assessment now, except to say that I don't see a reason to initiate a stoppage and to deprive the fans of hockey and to do the damage to the industry which would necessarily flow from that. I mean, think about it a minute. You got September the 15th. Camps don't even open for a few days after that. The season doesn't open for a while after that. Make your own judgments as to what that means. But again, I hope that we can find a way to do it before September the 15th. That's the goal. And I believe that's a shared goal. At least I hope it's a shared goal.
What's the next step? You sit down, Gary, I guess, next Wednesday. Counter proposal?
Well, there's a formal negotiating session, I think, tentatively scheduled for next Wednesday, but I expect we'll be talking before then, and there are some committee meetings before then. I don't know exactly what's going to transpire when we get to that point. The players obviously made the last move here, and it was a significant one, but we'll have to see. We did not do what a lot of people would characterize the owners as having done, which was to make a proposal which was just way over the top. We'll see what happens.
Are you more aggressive in telling players in these meetings to be prepared, save your money, whatever, however you?
I am not that message has not changed at all over the last 2 years. And it's something I learned a long, long time ago. You hope for the best, you do your damnedest to try and find a way to reach an agreement consistent with the interests of your constituents and what they want you to do. But at the same time, you don't prepare for the best case, you prepare for the worst case.
Realistically, if they're saying September 15th...
The rest of these guys paying you, the two of you, money for this?
If they're, for September 15th, I mean, yeah. Does that realistically give you time to work something out with the owners?
Sure, of course.
Because it would seem like it'd be, you're almost like behind an 8 ball on that.
I don't think that's the issue.
What is
I really don't. I don't think that's the
What
issue.
is the
The
major
timing
issue?
is not the issue.
What is the major issue as far as when you go back to talk with Gary? What do you personally?
I think you have to, from my standpoint, you have to look at what the owners put on the table. I mean, look, I'm not going to characterize it beyond this. The players made a concession of $1.04, 24% the last time around, an enormous amount of money. They limited the growth of their salaries to far below free market values. They had been getting about 74%. It went down to 54, slowly climbing to 57. This is what the owners wanted. It was supposed to fix all the problems. We've had, as some of your colleagues have mentioned, an enormous amount of revenue growth. And the result is that the proposal we get following that is it didn't work. We want concessions greater than we got the last time in dollar terms, at about the same level in percentage terms, and we want to change all the contracting terms so we reduce player leverage a lot when you negotiate the individual contract. So one of the things players ask me is, why did we give them what we did the last time if this is going to be the result this time? One of the things which appears to happen in the cap sports is that no matter what the economic circumstances are claimed to be, whether they are claimed to be losses as we had in basketball this last time, or whether there's an acknowledgement that there are no financial problems as we had in the NFL this last time, it doesn't matter. The position is we have a cap and the cap has to be lower. And that seems to be the case. The only, and I got to repeat this, I'm not, this is not because that's where my prior history is, but the only team sport in North America which is stable is baseball. There have been not a hint of labor relations problems for a decade and a half now. To add up the lockouts in the other sports, threatened and actual in that period of time. They do not have a salary cap. They do have very substantial and enhanced revenue sharing in baseball. And franchise values seem to be rising rather nicely. And just look at the two Southern California teams that sold recently, and you see that. And so if you don't want to compare yourself there, that seems to me to be a comparison you're not making because it doesn't suit your negotiating strategy. But, I can't go beyond that at this point. I still hope we're going to find a way to do this.
Is the next move up? Some teams that are struggling.
I'm sorry, what?
Is the next move up to the league then?
I'm not going to comment beyond that. I've said everything I can about what the next sessions will be.
Do you agree that there are some teams that are struggling? I believe you forwarded
what I said was,
plan that would have
what the players have said with this is that we're prepared to grant, for purposes of argument and making a deal, the owner's position that there are some teams that are in much less favorable circumstances than others. And what the players have said is that they would forego a portion of the increases they would otherwise receive as revenue grows, take a flat amount instead, if two things happen: that money is diverted to the teams that need it, and that the financially well-off clubs partner with us to do that. Because the proposal we got from the owners would functionally eliminate revenue sharing. And the reason I say that is that all of the obligations to make revenue sharing under their proposal would be offset by player salary cost reductions for those teams by even more than their revenue sharing commitments. And that, when you see that you have it obviously raises questions.
Don, you've invoked 04 for obvious reasons often. I don't know if you can answer this. If you were the labor boss and this league was being created out of thin air right now, how would you look at their proposal? Would it sound more fair? See what I'm saying? When you compare it, maybe it's not so much, but
No, I don't think so. I really don't know how to answer that question because it's an enormous amount of speculation. If you were creating things out of thin air, you wouldn't have the hard evidence. You wouldn't be able to make the comparisons that we can. You wouldn't have the history and all the rest of it. But you'd be, if you're representing the employees, you'd be looking at the same issues. What's their value in a market that's unrestrained? And when you're dealing with a cap, this goes without saying too, and we haven't had much discussion about it because I assume people understand it, but maybe I'm wrong. A salary cap, by definition, imposes a limit significantly below what the player's real value is, and it says that player compensation can't raise above that level, that cap, okay? It's not like a hat. It's like something that goes in a bottle well below the top. And so if you have a cap which approximates fair market value, it isn't any good to the owners. They don't save anything with it that way. So the analysis would begin with that proposition, as it should.
We good?
Yeah, one more. Just their reaction to your alternate proposal, from what we heard of Gary, didn't seem very positive. you expect that, or did you expect we're going to be a little closer after this? It seems like golf is still
I
there.
don't want to share expectations or make predictions or any of the rest of it. The players made the proposal. We hope that on further study and analysis, they'll find a more favorable reaction to it.
Thanks,
Okay.
Don.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.